This is Up for a Chat with your hosts Cyndi and Kim Morrison.
Here we are, up for a chat about the hottest topics that are important to you, inspiring you to awaken the change within. I'm Cyndi O'Meara.
And I'm Kim Morrison. This week, oh my gosh, not only are we live, but we have the gorgeous Dr. Pran Yoganathan. The reason why I'm feeling a little bit weird is
hot
because
under the collar.
The first time I saw this beautiful human speak was at your summit. And not only did he have a presence on stage, but you're incredible what you offer, Pran, and all of what you do. But I'm going to be honest with the listener. The first words I said when you walked up there was, hello, Christmas, and became very interested in gastroenterology. You're a doctor of gastroenterology, but you're way more than that. Would you mind taking us on a little journey as to what brought you into this field and also why you're so passionate about seeing it so differently?
Thanks, Kim. I appreciate that. Christmas is my favourite celebration, so that's nice to hear. Look, the journey's not been a linear journey. It's not been a stepwise journey. You know, I fell into a medical degree. It's not something that I was necessarily passionate about, but I saw it as a means of being a financially secure industry. We sort of came from a war-torn country. We were plunged into poverty as a family, and I just saw it as a means to essentially lift them out of it. I was a mathematician, in school, and I revelled in anything to do with logic, numbers, and the longer I spent in medicine, there were just so many aspects of it that just didn't resonate. There were issues with it that just didn't compute. The logics of it didn't necessarily make sense. So I think we become hyper-specialised, we become very focused and very reductionistic in our path and our careers, but it has never really been my passion to do that. I've always prided myself on taking a bird's eye perspective. I love the way birds soar and can look over something, and see it all. And so I've allowed myself to do that to an extent, to just allow myself to dream, and to dream means to soar. And when you can fly and soar, you can see the broad picture at play. So I don't consider myself a doctor per se. I'm a man, and what I do for a living is medicine. And part of my journey has been what I call regenerative medicine, which is bringing the soul back to medicine, the pathway of using nature to regenerate systems. Basically, in this case, the human body, working with nature, moulding nature to allow people to heal. Yeah.
Can I just bring something up there? This is quite fascinating. You are a bit of an enigma then, because one minute you're talking very left brain, logical, mathematical, sequential, organised, very structural. And yet there's this humanitarian, right brain, creativity, emotional, connectivity part of you. That's not common amongst a lot of professionals. We tend to lead with one and have to dabble in the other. How have you managed? Is it something higher that you believe in that has created the ability to bring both together?
Yeah, I think that's a great point you make, Kim. It really is. I mean, let's look at it from the macrocosm, right? We get right-wing politics and we get left-wing politics. You've either got to be right or left. What a neurotic dissociation, right? To be honest, you've got to be able to unify policy to be able to govern well, right? And this is why, a civilization that's plunged into chaos tends to really swing between right and left. I've got a right brain and I've got a left brain, and I've got this big tangle of nerves called the corpus callosum that connects the two. So really, to be a complete man, I've got to be able to unify the aspects of myself. I think Carl Jung, the great Carl Jung, the psychiatrist, philosopher, and somewhat of a mystic, spoke of being a complete man. The aim wasn't to be a bad man or a good man, it's to be a complete man. It's merging the dualities, and that's what I've tried to do. And it's interesting when you start merging these dualities, rather than seeing something as good or bad, or seeing it as one, aspects of yourself that are hidden start emerging. So even though I was a very logical man, when I went on this journey to try and unify everything, the poetic aspect of it spelt out. And with regards to, is there something higher guiding me? Well, I think it's your soul, and we can talk a little bit on what the soul is, or my perspective what the soul is a bit later on. But I feel that when you tap into that higher side of yourself, that guides you. Yeah.
So let's talk about the soul. What your vision of what is your definition of the soul, number one. But number two, what do you think the purpose of your soul is on this planet? Because I've been watching you, Pran, for a long time and listening to you speak, and I've seen this incredible growth, more, like almost a paradigm shift. Maybe you were there, but you weren't talking about it, and now you're talking about it. So I want to get in deep there. What's your purpose, or what's the purpose of your soul on this planet? And what is a soul?
Sure. Big question, Cyndi. I'll see if I can address that. When we talk about meditation, right, for instance, the purpose of meditation is to watch your own thoughts, to become an observer of your own thoughts. And I'm not claiming to be great at meditation. It's something that I'm working on, but there have been instances where I've been able to slip out of this human, that has all these, timelines and difficulties and, desires, etc., and just to observe, right? And I think that which observes is fundamentally your soul. So the soul seems to be observing your human at play, right? And so it's non-physical, it is incorporeal, it's intangible, and the Hindus and the Buddhists often speak of it as infinite, blazing into bodies, taking on bodies, and this is the process that they call reincarnation, almost like, the soul inhabits a vessel of flesh, almost like a driver entering a car. And when the car essentially runs out of fuel, which is a lifespan, well, the soul jumps into another car and takes on another car, and it appears that it in itself is in a process of evolution. Like we've got evolution of biological systems. It takes time, right? Millions of years for evolution to occur. It can't happen quicker if the selection pressures allow. So you've got biological evolution, and then you've got some form of spiritual evolution where these intangible, infinite energies are evolving. Now, if we are to talk about what the soul is, I think it is important to also touch on the aspect of, a playground for the souls to play. And that's what I suspect these 4 dimensions of the cosmos is. It's literally a playground where these souls enter to play. Some people call it a simulation. We've heard of the simulation theory now that's been popularized. But I think we've got to be careful calling it a simulation because it lessens it. It almost talks of it like it's a computer game of some sort. It isn't. It's a very vast, beautiful algorithm that is clearly infinitely complex. I mean, we just have to look at nature to understand how complex it is. It's an infinitely complex realm that our consciousness enters to evolve itself. And it seems that we can't necessarily leave that construct till there is the full evolution of the soul. And I think the soul's journey is essentially one from having conditional love to evolving towards unconditional love. And I think that's a journey all of us are on. Of course, these concepts of reincarnation were widely talked about by great brains, Plato, Aristotle, Pythagoras, all of which was condemned. In those days, they called it metempsychosis, the process of rebirth. But, this was not looked upon favourably by the powers the Roman axis of power. And unfortunately, even in in ideologies such as Christianity, that concept has been taken out. But in smaller sects of Christianity, Gnostics in particular, which arose in from the Essenes, they still talk about reincarnation. So this was all written out, but through archaeological finds where these texts were buried, clearly because they were under persecution from the Roman Church or Catholic Church at the time, that knowledge was lost. So I think we're on a journey, and this is why I'm not too rushed in this journey that I'm on. I'm just taking it one step at a time and almost becoming the observer somewhat. I go through these life events, both positive and negative, but stepping back and just observing. And when you see life like that, I think there's an element of a higher purpose. We must be here for something bigger, something greater. So in that sense, you want to leave behind some sort of mark. And in my case, I would love to leave a mark on my field, on my chosen industry, which is medicine. It is a beautiful field to be in. You step into this realm, and all doctors are the same. We step into this realm to help. But somewhere along the line, the powers that be essentially take us away from our higher purpose. And that's hopefully what we can bring back.
Can we look at this then from a doctor perspective?
Sure.
That I'd just love to know what you think as you go into the operating theatre and you see this person, or you have a client in front of you and you see this person with a problem, but then that person, the biology, the makeup of us, if we all went under the barrel of a microscope, we look the same. Yet it's that soul, that essence, that persona of who we are that determines our behaviours or our beliefs or our values. Do you take that into account when you have a client in front of you or when someone's on the table, or is it just you go straight into medicine mode?
Well, it's evolved a lot over time, Kim. I mean, when I started off my consultations as a young specialist, I was cold, I was mechanical, logistics, mathematics, looking at the clock. And to be honest, you'd go home just drained. It wasn't fun. It was just a chore, a living, essentially clocking in, clocking out. A rat race fundamentally, and I was a rat trapped in a rat race. I didn't like it. But nowadays there's just a lot more fun, a lot more play with my patients, and I get to know them. I try to get to know them as best I can, because I read recently, I can't remember who said it, but disease seems to be the tears that we can't cry. So a lot of people are coming to see me for what I consider to be disease or what they consider to be illness. But it appears a lot of times it's just things that their soul can't express, often driven by pain. And so to be able to address disease, we need to be able to understand the person in front of us. Very hard to do because we've got 30-minute consultations, and often my consultations go on for longer. But this is where forums such as this is so useful, because a lot of people that seek me out have gotten to know my perspective through these sort of mediums. Thus, they already kind of on the pathway to what my consultation or my perspective of life is. So we launch straight into it.
But you're not just a gastroenterologist in the office by yourself. You're using other tools such as diet as well. Somebody that spoke at my summit, I think the year before you did, was a neurologist. And he started to go into the ketogenic diet and functional movement. And basically he said that 80% of the clients that came in that they thought they were going to have an operation didn't end up having an operation. And he's been helping people with oligosaccharides. It's a brain tumour. He's been helping them with those, staying on the ketogenic diet and keeping those tumours down. Yep. And he says his accountant doesn't like him much anymore because he's not making the money he used to make, but he's helping people. And I see you as that same model in medicine, is that you're looking at other aspects of the human other than just looking at being a plumber within the gastrointestinal tract. I didn't mean to degrade being gastroenterologist, but I had a friend say to me, "I'm just a plumber, Cyndi." So what other things are you putting into your practice that when people come to see you?
There are pillars to health, there's a quality, if we look at the cosmos again, right? Like if we can go back to this 4 dimensions, we've got water within the cosmos, our body's 60% water, and one has to question the quality of the water. Is it structured water that we're consuming? Are there chemicals? I mean, you've seen the recent headlines of what's going on in certain areas in Sydney where the amount of forever chemicals in our water supply is incredible. Now, I've been saying this for many years and have been written off by many of my colleagues, but it seems that our water systems have degraded. Civilization or modernity as we live in have degraded the water systems. Not surprising because modern systems of farming leach these chemicals into our waterways and through other means as well. But, 60% of our bodies come from water. So the water is compromised. Our food comes from the soil, and we can touch on that later, but the soil is compromised. So those pillars to health, water and soil, is an issue. And then you combine it with things like fake light, that we're immersed in as opposed to the natural sunlight that we're supposed to get, the blue light that we consume from our phones and TVs and computer screens all day. So the light environment's compromised. Now, you throw all of that in with a spiritual detachment, do people really believe in the concept of a soul anymore or something outside time and space? We don't. So there's that amputation from the soul. So it's happening at multiple levels, and all of it comes down to detachment. We're no longer attached to the water, food, spiritual or light supply, and so we're essentially amputated from the source. So the process of healing, I suspect, is plugging back into nature. If our bodies are formed through the algorithm of nature, and we're saying soul is outside of that, well, we've got to heal the body. We've got to plug the body back into the algorithm, work with her rhythm, nature's rhythm, to be able to restore the rhythms of your body. Yeah.
It's a fascinating thing because Cyndi, for years, I've watched her speak and she's asked questions in front of people. If you were faced with a life-threatening illness, how many of you would change what you're doing? And everyone puts their hand up. But the statistics that Cyndi's always shared is the reality is actually only 1 in 10 of you will follow through with that. That detachment or that belief or that non-awareness that the body can heal is quite sad for a lot of people, or they feel that they need medicine or pharmaceutical drugs, or they don't trust the innate healing ability of the body through the power of those 4 fundamentals that you're talking about. How do you convince or support your clients to actually reconnect with and know that the body that grows itself heals itself?
Look, I would never knock pharmaceuticals. That the term is a Greek term, old Greek term. It comes from the word pharmakos. Pharmakos in Greece, ancient Greek, represented a duality, right? An opposite duality where it would be cure and poison. The word meant both, right? And when you think of the development of penicillin as an antibiotic and what that did for civilization, we saved lives with that, right? And that was incredible. It was an incredible development. Antibiotics were a core part of us living better lives in civilization. And we needed antibiotics because when we became civilized, we started living within villages, towns and cities, as opposed to roaming hunter-gatherers. We were now, congregated into one area, living alongside animals, living alongside our own waste, right? So infections became more common. So developing penicillin or antibiotics was a core part of improving people's lifespans within what we've developed, civilization. We can't knock civilization, because without civilization there is no higher living. There's no poetry, there's no mathematics, there's no legal code, right? And that was important for our consciousness to step up. People romanticize the life of a hunter-gatherer, but there's nothing to be romanticized. It was a very difficult life, and we still need to look at many of the tribes that live as hunter-gatherers, whilst that there's almost a sense of innocence to how they live. If introduced to civilization, they would always pick civilization. It's an easier life, but it also allows us to contemplate higher things, using a railway or pathway that's been set before us. So pharma costs or pharmaceuticals were an important part of that. However, we've now tipped over into the point where it's gone from being a cure to a poison, because the wound that is inflicted is fundamentally the ills of civilization. So we're essentially seeking cures for a wound that is quite easily rectified. And so that's what it comes down to. And when I explain these things to people are so time poor. Right, that's ultimately what it is. The gift that we're given, our souls are given in this cosmos, is time. Time is the gift. That is a divine dimension. But if one is continually caught in what I call before the rat race, we don't have time for that. And that's where the macroeconomics of the way the world works and money systems come into it as well, because people are pushed for time to survive. We call it making a living, as in, if you don't work, you don't live. It's not what do you do to contribute to society, it's what do you do to make a living. And that's what it ultimately comes down to. We've been pushed for time, and people are no longer able to grant time to improve health, because living is difficult. And as we're driven by things like inflationary pressures, which make lives even harder to live, people have even less time. So this is why health will decline as things like inflation rise. It's just, again, putting my logistics or logical brain on it. It's mathematics. Yeah.
So I kind of hear pessimism there as to whether people are going to change. And like as Kim said, 1 in 10, that's the stats that will change. So I hear some pessimism from you that because of everything that's happening, they're just not going to change. I just want to give my optimism here. I feel like, and I might be looking at a gifted horse in the mouth or something like that, but I feel like what's happening in American politics at the moment, especially the Maha movement, which is, make America healthy again, and I would hope that would make Australia healthy again. Can we turn this ship around if what we're seeing over there with Robert Kennedy can come to Australia? Do you think it could be turned around?
I think so. There's a lot of optimism, actually. I'm sorry if I came across pessimistic. Within that spark of cynicism and pessimism, there is a flame of optimism there. I think the systems that we've built for ourselves, where the monetary system that we built, needs to implode. It needs to be torn down. And unfortunately, when you tear something down, there's always, when you rip off a Band-Aid, there's initially going to be blood. And I think we have to prepare for that. But I think what is to come beyond that is majestic. It's the great unveiling. I love the term apocalypse. It conjures up all these dark images for people. The four horsemen of apocalypse. It's death and destruction. It's not that. Apocalypse is the unveiling. It's the great, where the veil is torn down, and people need to wake up and understand what lives and breathes within what they call their countries. We've got a system of universal banking that is the tentacles of a Medusa that's embedded its serpent into every country. It's where we create money out of thin air and use that to build corporate systems, which has built the corporate systems of farming. It's built the corporate systems of food distribution. It's built the corporate giants that is the duopoly of Coles and Woolworths. It's forced farmers into servitude to these leviathans, and that's what it comes down to. It's money. And when you've got that type of system of modern economics, it mathematically causes the rise of corporatism. And so when you've got these sparks of optimism, such as yourself and Kim, floating around, it's at the moment it's overwhelmed by the darkness of corporatism built by the monetary system. That needs to collapse, and it will collapse. It is on its last legs, and I think we'll see that when the American superpower that it is defaults on debt. It's getting there, and they're already many trillions in debt, and very soon they won't be able to sustain that. It is something to be said, Cyndi, when there's no real value in money anymore, right? Where you could just create credit out of nowhere and then use that to build a massive high-rise or a big monocrop system farming, right? You've essentially robbed from Mother Earth, right? And you've underpinned that with no value. So Mother Earth always comes knocking, but the debts must be repaid. And we as a people, and I'm complicit in all of this, right? We all are. We exist. Yeah, we're wearing clothes which have required significant chemical input to make. We've all got to readjust our expectations. And with that readjustment of expectations, we will see a standard of living that is vastly different, more in tune with nature. And with that, we will rediscover health. But at the moment, the way we are, we're blinded to this power that lives and breathes within Australia, which is the system of modern banking. It lives in every country. The countries that have chosen not to accept it are out of the system. This is North Korea, Libya. They have no central banking system. They are essentially amputated from the rest of the world, and they do not live well, right? And my point here is to participate in their game. You've got to participate in their system, which is modern banking. And money is such an important thing for people to understand, but we're not taught this. We are not taught this in school. The reason for that is quite deliberate, because if we knew it, we'd be outraged. And it's interesting to me that when you start this pathway of I'm going to eat better and I'm going to buy direct from farmers and I'm going to look into regenerative agriculture, filter my water, sit in the sun, I'm going to revere nature. You start asking big questions about what the monetary system is, and money is an energy. Like, it's fundamentally an energy that we use to communicate with each other, to be able to trade with each other, and that if that energy is corrupted, it corrupts everything around it. So there is optimism there, but there's also realism in knowing that we have to readjust our expectations.
And as individuals, I see a beautiful groundswell happening, and I think you're in that community. There's so many conferences and seminars and people out there spruiking this, and the regen farming is part of that movement. Buying from your local farmer, buying locally, seasonally. Making sure maybe you buy clothes that are ethically sourced or go second hand. I think there's a real beautiful groundswell movement that is happening. And the fact that I've been in this health field for 45 years, and I feel this incredible momentum happening at the moment that I've never felt before. And I meet the likes of you and so many other doctors that have been educated in a very mechanistic paradigm, looking at the way you're looking at medicine, that more than just a diagnosis and a medication or a surgery, there is so much more to the human body and so much more to the soil and the food that we're given. So I don't know much about the monetary system. I want to ask you a million questions, but I feel that how to get out of that is to buy local. Yeah, definitely. I think eat seasonally, buy local, value everything that goes in your mouth, or as best you can to your ability. I think and just to be able to step back and see the game that's being played, the health bodies and the various powers that be that
handing out false information, actually telling people that nutritious foodstuffs are killing them. You know, this war against red meat that's waged for many decades is a reflection of that. You know, when the native Indians in America were fighting their great war against what they perceived to be the colonizer at the time, the way they were starved was fundamentally the killing of their food source, the bison, which were just murdered in their tens of thousands, and essentially wasted. The meat was wasted, but they starved those people of their food supply. So when you get a war against red meat, what are they trying to starve the people of? Is it starving them of vital nutrients that gives them not only mental resilience but physical resilience? Like, why? Why is that? Is it to sell these cheap ultra-processed foods where the overheads are just a lot less? I mean, you can corporatise beef, but the overheads, you know, are not great. Whereas when you corporatise grain, the overheads are enormous. So it's a great awakening. I believe people are slowly waking up to it, and I'm seeing it real time. You know, even in my own clinical practice, people have lost the trust, and that is the beginning of intelligence, is losing trust. It's awakening to the illusion of what we've been under. Just over these last decade, the amount of people that are critical about news, legacy media, is incredible. So I think we keep going on that path. We just slowly awaken people, one person at a time, and there are some that don't want to be awakened, and that's their journey. You know, it's like The Matrix, the great piece of cinema where the character Cypher wanted to be reinserted into the Matrix. Many people will be awakened, but they'll choose not to stay awake. They would want to fall back asleep, back into that deep slumber, into a dream. And I don't think we judge those people, but I see a separation in our species coming. I think there are those that are drawn to nature, more into rural communities, and there are others that are going to be drawn further into urban communities. And for me to capture health in these gentrified concrete jungles that we've built ourselves is very, very difficult. So am I telling people to move into rural communities? I'm saying have a link there. It's so interesting when I spend time on the farm and spend time with my neighbours in the rural side of the world. They very few of them will go into cities voluntarily, and they say when they talk to people that have come from urban environments, it's like they look at them as though they were aliens, as in the farmers. So they try and communicate, but the language that they're speaking is no longer the same. There's this great urban and rural divide. But then you have to have people that can bridge, that can act as a bridge into that rural community, because essentially what we're saying when we talk about re-engaging with the rural communities, re-engaging with your food supply, it's picking up that umbilical cord and plugging it back into your navel, because that's what ultimately feeds you, and so that's part of my journey, is to bridge that urban-rural divide.
We know that for many people, it's the wake-up occurs when they've been confronted with a life-threatening illness or a disaster or a trauma.
Yeah.
It seems part of the human psyche is we live this comfortable life, we live this beautiful world until we're not. And that's usually a wake-up for people. You mentioned at the beginning that doctors or people like yourself go into medicine to help, to serve, to want to support the health of our nation and our individuals. And yet you also mentioned that there is a corruption or some sort of persuasion that occurs through that, where